Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast in which two friends journey back in time to rediscover our geeky selves and all of the geekiness that we fell in love with, science fiction, fantasy, you name it. We talk about it. And we were geek, therefore, ergo, before it was chic. I'm Tom Grant, your co-host, and today I've experienced deep hurting.
And I'm your co-host, Stephen Taylor, and don't call me Albert.
Oh, okay. Well then, if you're wondering why I'm making a Mystery Science Theater reference in an episode about Harlan Ellison, it has a lot to do with the topic today. We're going to be covering other adaptations of his work to the screen, either the big screen or the small screen. All will become clear as we go, but before we do that, what have you been doing lately that is geek-related, Stephen?
So I went ahead and finished Ellison's Greatest Hits, the collection that we talked about in previous episodes that Straczynski edited. So I would, partially just to be a completist, but I thought, well, what the heck? And I was struck by two stories that I'll go ahead and highlight real quick. One is How Interesting a Tiny Man, which is the last story that he won the Nebula for in 2011. Have you read the story?
Yes, I have.
I actually was quite taken with the story because it actually had a full narrative. I understood what the point was trying to be made.
Yeah.
And it had twists. It had a Harlan-esque twist at the end.
It was a good satire. What would you say the moral was, or the
I
theme
thought it was about the fact that one, I think he was an opportunity to yet again attack television as a general matter.
Yeah, any opportunity.
But I thought it was about the way in which society tends to react negatively to things they don't understand. That was my interpretation.
Yeah, it's about bigotry. I think pretty clearly.
But I mean, I think
it's a good story.
I think it's very short. I just think it was accomplished more of what he often claimed he was trying to do than some of the stories that we talked about. So it struck me that way. Okay. The other thing that I read that I was noteworthy was unless you've read it since we talked about it, because I brought it up to you before we recorded, was the novella "All the Lies That Are My Life."
Right.
And it is. I was impressed with it insofar as it was one of the longer form things he wrote that had it's sort of, I think, a very coherent narrative, and that actually at least fleshed out some characters in ways that often he didn't do. And it was nothing supernatural, even magical about the story. He was really just a kind of it's supposed to be semi-autobiographical, I guess, or at least as some people think it was, and I can see that. But I was struck by it because it was the only thing that I would say is yet again, were I his editor, there are a couple of things I would have said, hey man, maybe we should think about changing this part. He probably would have then punched me in the nose for suggesting such a thing.
Right.
But it was anyway. I don't know. I was pleased with those stories. Okay. How about yourself?
So I've had on the brain ever since I wrote that post on Substack about the kind of the golden age of fantasy and science fiction and movies from 1977 through 1987. All the movies I never saw that came in that particular epoch. And so I watched Krull, which I had never seen before. And I seem to vaguely remember there was a video game based on it that I might have played.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was.
Yeah, where you threw the spinning shuriken of death. Anyway, I watched it. Wow. Just wow. I'm not surprised there is a RiffTrax version of it. I wish I'd watched the RiffTrax version of it. It is...
I've never seen it.
It is startlingly bad.
Who was the star of that movie?
I'm glad you asked. It's the same actor who played Eddington on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. You know what I did? I remember reading that bit of trivia. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And so it's this British production, but with him, an American or Canadian actor. I think he's Canadian originally. Anyway, so you get British actors in this fantasy story. It has sort of a cool idea that they're going to do kind of a heavy metal sort of mix of science fiction and fantasy elements. So science fantasy for you kids out there who've never heard that phrase before. And so the bad guys have these laser lances, but otherwise the technology is very much in the Middle Ages. It could have been better, but there's nothing that was good about this. I mean, it was the writing was bad. It was one of the only movies lately where I said, I can't believe how bad the casting is. So
Uh,
another bit of another bit of trivia about it. This is an early performance by Liam Neeson, who shows up as a member of the merry band who are fighting the big bad. But the other members of the merry band include people who look like they came off an episode of EastEnders. They're these British working class guys, and like they didn't do anything in the movie to make them sound or look particularly medieval, or just not like they're from an episode of EastEnders. So there's this one in particular, this guy with kind of like this very square head that's accentuated by his haircut. He's got black hair, kind of a pencil thin mustache, very blocky looking guy. He looks sort of, Lego like. Anyway, and he's not a great actor. Sorry if you're listening to this, whoever you are, but I can't commend you for your acting ability, at least in Krull. Maybe you were the Olivier of your generation elsewhere, but anyway, and so when he dies, it's just unintentionally comic because you've like spent the whole time having this kind of jarring feeling, like where did this guy wander in from into this movie? Oi, governor. I'm doing I can't do British accents very well, but anyway, and he dies in this sort of lackluster way that, of course the music is swelling. It's James Horner. Like
yeah, that's right.
James
Yeah.
Horner turned up to 11, and I'm glad I finally watched it, and thank God it was only an hour and a half. But wow, just wow.
Yeah,
That's my review. Wow.
there's another thing we're going to talk about today that I was glad was only an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you hear me laughing and I sound a little consumptive, listeners, I still have the cold. We've recorded the Ellison episodes very close together. We haven't been pacing this once per week, so it's still the same cold. Do not call 911 on my behalf. I'm fine, thank you. Or I will be a lot finer in a few days. All right. So the soundtrack. If
Yes.
we could afford a soundtrack, which of course we can't, what would you want for the soundtrack of this episode?
So I've got two.
Okay.
One is Jim Croce's Time in a Bottle, because as I was watching The Starlost, I felt like I had been bottled in some sort of slow time warp. And then second, also because The Starlost, I would say the Suite from the Inner Light from Star Trek. So
Yeah.
here's some good SF flute music as opposed to whatever the hell that was in The
Yes.
Starlost.
Yes. Yeah. I think Time in a Bottle is pretty good also because it makes me think of the little snapshots for for the Star Lost that were on YouTube. I watched episodes that were archived on YouTube, and it seemed like half of them had a picture of Rachel, one of the main characters, like yelling ah, and including like the Oro the alien episode where she's
Yes.
in Oro's ship. It's a terrifying scene in which the door closes.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, what are you going to do?
What are
The
you gonna
door
do?
shut. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yes.
Okay, so you can tell we're really warming up for the Starlight. Oh man, this is going to be fun. Um, I chose the really lousy soundtrack for the Starlost, which is
Yes, yes, yes.
not just kind of this very dull sort of 70s, because the show was in 1973, 70s version of a spooky, spacey soundtrack. But they couldn't afford to spend much money on music. So you heard the same music clips
Yes.
over and over and over. And it wasn't like Star Trek the animated series where like, okay, they were all right. They were a little catchy and you got a little
Yes.
bit of a brainworm a problem from some of them, but at least they were good enough to be brainworms.
Oh no. It made me wish for the symphonic masterpiece that was Star Trek, the animated series.
Yeah, I said brainworm. I meant earworm. I don't want a brainworm.
Well, brainworms cause other problems, as we are aware. Yes.
Yes, I know. Did you ever think that in public life we'd be talking about brainworms?
No.
Yeah, as
So, I mean, I have a long list of
as
things
an
I didn't
influence
think.
on
Yeah.
governance. Right. All right. So, out of our devotion to you, dear listener, we are going all the way through as much of the Harlan Ellison adaptation catalog as we could possibly do. And because we did the last episode, we talked about the City on the Edge of Forever and the Outer Limits episodes. We didn't have time in order to do the other sort of marquee Ellison adaptations that Ellison himself talked about frequently.
Oh, yes.
So it would be really remiss of us not to touch those particular bases in this survey of all things Ellison. So we're going to be talking about the 70s TV shows The Starlost and the 70s movie A Boy and His Dog. And we'll also have a brief mention of some other bits of media, including some of the comic book work
Yes.
that he did. But it's really going to be about The Starlost and A Boy and His Dog for the bulk of this episode.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So The Starlost. So this is like the early 70s,
Yes.
post 2001. All right. Put on your leisure suit and travel back in time with us to infiltrate the making of this television show.
Your leisure, I can't talk today. Your leisure suit, that's hard to say for some reason. And your helmet hair. That's the
In your
thing.
helmet. There's a lot of helmet hair.
Like, why? And I know it's not just a show. There's some other stuff that I saw that made me think about it, but why did we ever think it was a good idea
I don't know.
to grow our hair over our ears like
Yes.
that? I don't understand. Oh my goodness.
So I have found that, a good tool for dealing with misbehaving children in the here and now is showing pictures of my haircut from not too long after this TV show was made. So I have nothing to say about my own inherent superiority over the helmet hair of 1973. All
Fair
right.
enough.
Had you seen this show before we worked on these
No,
episodes?
no, I
Okay.
had not.
It's not widely available. You really do have to go on Safari in order to bring this one back alive. Um, okay, a quick summary of
Less so now than in the past. You can get it on. It's on YouTube now, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's out there on the internet. You can find it if you want to see it. And I think it's worth validating what we're going to say about the show as not being an exaggeration.
No.
Yeah. So seek it out. Don't feel obliged to watch a whole episode. That would be self-harm.
Just watch the first few minutes of the first episode, and that may be enough to give you a taste of the whole
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Okay. So the concept of the show is that there is a multi-generation ship. And if you have not heard that phrase before, it's a common science fiction theme in which, for whatever reason, usually some sort of catastrophe that happened on planet Earth, humans have built a space ark of some sort, some giant spaceship that includes, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of human beings that are shot off into space. Maybe they know where they're going. Maybe they're looking for a habitable planet along the way, whatever. But that's the basic idea behind a lot of science fiction stories over, not just recent times. I found out that this
No.
goes all the way back to like the 30s and maybe even the 20s.
Yes. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, as is the case in many of these stories, there had been, prior to the timeline of the TV series, a terrible disaster. Often something bad happens to the generation ship. And what a coincidence that a disaster is also a good description of the show, aside from one of the plot elements. um, would you find this idea appealing, as a TV show if it had been pitched to you? You knew nothing about the Starlost. You didn't know that Harlan Ellison's name was attached to it. If somebody told you there's a TV show about a generation ship, a disaster, and people have to save humanity by fixing the ship, would you watch that show?
Sure, I give it a try. I think it's a workable concept. What do you think?
Oh yeah, it's a great concept. I mean, there's lots of versions of it, as I said.
Yeah.
So I'll mention because of the kind of the need to be a completist here, but you have like one of the earliest versions of this story in 1934 by Lawrence Manning, The Living Galaxy. There's a Brian Aldiss novel, Nonstop, which has been on my pile of books to read, and maybe this episode will inspire me finally to get around to reading that one. Robert Heinlein's Orphans of the Sky, many others. There was even the second role-playing game produced by TSR. The first role-playing game they produced as a company was, of course, Dungeons and Dragons. The second one they produced was designed by Jim Ward, and it was called Metamorphosis Alpha. And it was basically this idea. There's a giant generation ship. There's a catastrophe. The ship has been flooded with radiation, which causes mutations. There are mutated humans, there are mutated animals, and even plants.
Hmm.
So the second big role-playing game in history was a game set in this particular kind of place and time, in the future on a generation ship. So the idea was in the air, and Ellison
Oh yeah.
pitched this. And he certainly acknowledged the roots of the idea, but he pitched
No,
this because it was
absolutely.
definitely novel for television. I don't think
Hmm.
any television of using this idea had been produced before. And certainly, I think it's good for episodic television because you have these different compartments of the spaceship that present, kind of opportunities for the problem of the week. It's a different society, a
Sure.
different crisis. Anyway,
When
so
instead of traveling to other planets in the Starlost, planets come to you.
that's right. Planets are just down the
That's
corridor,
right.
just
Sure.
down the corridor. However appealing the idea might have been, the execution fell apart pretty quickly. And this
Clearly.
was, yeah, this was one of the stories that Ellison liked to tell. I
Yes.
listened there was a two-part video series on YouTube of an interview with him. It sounded as though it was done maybe like a couple or a few years after the whole Star Lost debacle. And here in it, he describes what happened, where it went from an idea that was pitched to be a BBC TV show, made in co-production with American producers,
20th
to
Century Fox.
yeah, 20th Century Fox, to involving him and another important science fiction writer, Ben Bova, who was at the time the editor of Analog magazine, and also Doug Trumbull, who had done a lot of the special effects for 2001. And because of various machinations by the guy who, how would you describe him? He was sort of like an agent or a
I thought it was
go-between,
basically a
or
producer,
yeah, a
sort of
producer. But anyway,
TV executive type. Yeah, I think he was a producer,
it
basically.
winds up getting produced in Canada
Hmm.
for on a minuscule budget.
Yes.
And Ellison didn't like what he was seeing from the beginning. So the producer was doing things that Ellison asked him not to do. Ellison felt taken advantage of hugely
Hmm.
by this person. They cast Keir Dullea, one of the stars of 2001: A Space
Hmm.
Odyssey, but Ellison was convinced that was a bad idea. They messed up elements of how the pilot episode would go, revealing
Yes.
things that were supposed to be revealed much later in the
Yes.
series.
That's right. Yeah,
It's a fun listen. I mean, because Ellison is a great storyteller,
sure.
and his version of events really does make you understand, at least to kind of, if you take everything he says at
Right.
face value, why he would ultimately, before this show ever showed up on television, want to be taken off the show and have
Hmm.
his name replaced with his nom de plume cordwainer bird.
Yes. Yes. All of which is detailed in that essay somewhere. Somehow, I don't think we're in Kansas Toto, right? Which he has
Hmm.
three iterations. It was originally published in 74. Then there's a version of it in the novelization of his script in 1975. And then in Stalking the Nightmare, which is the version I read
Hmm.
in 82, it's expanded even yet again. And yeah, I think, as I understand it, he did like to tell the story over and over again. Now, I'm gonna say, right, that in some ways, it sounds like his version of the City on the Edge of Forever story, which is basically interference by
Hmm.
executives. Well, not quite the same. Um, and I also, as with Ellison and all things, I've decided I can't always take everything he says about himself at face value. So I'll assume that maybe there are other problems that he wasn't, maybe
Yeah.
he was involved in, I don't know. But I will say this much. The output is so terrible that it's hard not to be more sympathetic to Ellison's point of view on all this, right?
Yes.
I did
I
think I was
wouldn't want my
thinking,
name on this.
oh
You know,
no, 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 no.
and Ben Bova took his name off completely.
No, he wanted to. I don't think he
Right.
did.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
wanted.
yeah, he had him on as a scientific advisor, and yet the people making the show would insist on things that were just scientifically stupid.
Yes.
And so, like, it was jarring in the first episode when they talked about that the spaceship was going to crash into a solar sun. And Ellison's very funny about this,
Right, right, right.
like
Yeah.
it's like saying, a man guy,
Yeah, yeah. Or I burned down my house home. Yeah.
or I'm going to eat a hamburger sandwich,
Yes.
and it pops up again because I unwisely watched another episode beyond the ones that we originally talked about,
Bless your
and
heart, man.
and Keir Dullea again says solar sun. Like they didn't even
Yeah.
fix that by episode
No.
11 or whatever it was.
This radiation virus and I just all kinds of
All right, well
stuff.
let's purge. Let's
Sure.
have our primal scream here and talk about how and why this is so bad.
Oh goodness, where to start? So yeah, we watched just for clarity, right? We watched 4 episodes, but you watched apparently a little more than that for some
Yeah,
insane reason.
I had to see the one with Ed Ames.
Okay, I watched the first episode, um, which was called Journey to Discovery, which was renamed from Ellison's Phoenix Without Ashes.
Hmm.
It's the origin story kind of the thing. And then we watched the second one, which I didn't write the title down. I'll call it Frozen Caveman Doctor because they revive a frozen doctor, and
Yes,
and then the third one was the goddess. I actually didn't write the titles
Calabra,
down. Calabra, and then
hmm
and
and
that
then
one was the
Oro the alien,
Oro the alien, which I did right. The alien Oro, actually,
the
the
alien
alien
Oro. I'm
Oro
sorry. Yes, you're right.
with Walter Koenig as the alien Oro, and was very clever that Oro wore gold. I was very impressed by this.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
I hadn't thought of that.
yeah,
Wow, what cleverness.
yeah, it was awesome. So
Yeah.
anyway, I mean, generically, here's what I would say. I mean, it is ponderous in its presentation. I don't know if a director was involved, which presumably there was a director. The direction must have been be as flat and as boring as possible, and take as long to do simple things as you possibly
And
can.
don't move.
Very little movement. Um, I mean, yeah, what little special effects there are not great.
Yes.
Um, I Now again, it may be the fault of other people, but maybe now I think Stanley Kubrick is a genius because he made Keir Dullea seem like a human being in 2001. He does not seem like one
No.
in this. None of the actors are very good. I mean, I will say to
So
lay it
there are
down,
three main
three main
characters.
characters. Yeah, there's
Right.
Devon, who is sort of the main protagonist. Then
Hmm.
there's Rachel, who he's in love with, but is betrothed to Garth
And like
because.
he's in love with her. I mean, if you looked at his visible emotions, the same way I'm in love with going to the DMV.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah, I mean
they,
that's the sort of emotion that you feel the
yeah,
electric charge that arcs between them.
and the notion of the story is, I don't even remember, Devin got in trouble at some point and got banished into the woods for a while and somehow managed to
Right.
figure out that they were used on a space. Well, he figured
Well,
something was wrong with the biosphere because they live in this Amish community, right?
yes.
They're space Amish, except they're just Amish. Although the main head of the Amish order uses some technology, which really is not very Amish if you stop and think about it, to pretend like he's the voice of God.
Right.
I was so like or not mesmerized, mesmerized the wrong word. I was just sort of like so stultified by the whole thing that I didn't pay super attention to some of this stuff as I was
Yes.
watching it. I think in the original script, there really was supposed to be some more of a, questioning authority kind of thing and
Hmm.
false religion that really only kind of exists on the screen in this case.
Right.
But then Devin gets sort of tried at some point, and he wants to marry Rachel, but the computer says, again, why are Amish using a computer to determine who to breed? I just really hit my brain right now. But they were like, they would match people up because of genetics, I guess. But then,
Right.
so Garth the blacksmith was going to marry Rachel, but Devin wanted to marry Rachel, and then Devin
Because they,
escapes, and
well, yeah, because the machine
yeah,
told
machine said they had
everybody.
to.
Yeah, because they had to, and it
So
turns
some
out that it's not really the machine.
No, it's just the
Yeah.
the old guy.
Right.
with the
And
long
this is
beard.
one of my beefs with the pilot is that
Yeah.
it's so cliche. Like if you were
Yes.
to,
Yes.
kind of set up a story in which people who don't know they're living on a spaceship or living in a society that the misunderstood, rebellious young protagonist has to escape from,
Hmm.
I think it is not a great mental leap to set it in some sort of very hermetically sealed religious society
Right.
where the religious authorities are really just, naked authoritarians behind the scenes,
Yes.
behind the curtain of all the religious belief.
So somehow Devin finds out that he's on a spaceship because
Hmm.
he opens a door that he shouldn't be able to open and then flies through a corridor for reasons I don't totally understand with really terrible special effects.
Well, that's
And
how you get quickly from
sure.
one biosphere to another because the pods are really distant from one another.
It's a
And so for
like it's like a
convenience, you're flung through the air. And
it's a
eventually you
bo-
can kind of,
it's kind of a boom tube, I guess.
yeah.
And then he finds a computer, and in some ways, it is both a testament to how bad the show is, but also maybe my favorite part is the weird computer with the giant glasses and the beard that can't
Oh,
answer
he's the
questions.
best. He's the best. He's the best thing in the show.
It's the best thing in the show. He
Yes.
is
So the voice
William
of the computer,
Osler.
yeah, he comes on.
Yeah,
He's got round little glasses, very
yeah,
professorial looking, and say, "How can I help you?" And he has
that's
like
right.
strange pauses, strange
Yes, he does.
Shatner-esque pauses in his speech.
Not even, I mean, but
Yeah.
strange Shatner-esque, and then in so far as the parody of Shatner kind of thing, right? I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can answer questions, and sometimes it can't. And like one of the episodes, he gets upset because they're yelling at him. I'm like, I can never figure out,
Yeah.
is he sentient? Is he like an AI that just sort of responds like a chatbot? I don't know. It doesn't matter, but not that they figured it out either in the show itself, I'm sure. And somehow, and
Well, he's
another
more
thing that,
emotional than
oh,
the
100%,
actors playing the
100%.
humans.
Um, and and then one of the things that bothered me too about this, all the episodes was that somehow they both are supposed to be these main characters are supposed to be simple Amish folk from Cypress Grove, which
Hmm.
really made me think more kind of like, Little House on the Prairie kind of thing. But anyway, yet they understand things they shouldn't understand. They
Right.
don't understand everything, but they understand way too much as to what's going on, quite frankly, in my opinion. Did you feel that way?
Yeah. Yeah.
But somehow Devin decides he's going to go fix the ark so that it doesn't smash into the G-class Solaris Sun or whatever the hell it was they're going to crash into. And Rachel goes with him, and then Garth tries to make them come back, but then
Hmm.
somehow, through a very emotional scene, not, he talks
No.
Garth into not shooting them with the crossbow.
Garth,
Why is a
don't shoot
pro?
with a crossbow.
Please,
Okay,
yeah,
I
yeah,
won't. But I'm keeping my eye on you, Devin.
that's right. And I don't know why an Amish blacksmith has a crossbow made out of chrome, but that's okay.
But it has one
Um,
crossbow bolt.
yeah, it's
So it better be one opponent and
that's
he
right.
better hit.
It better hit it. So strange. And then, oh my God, they get the episode starts with the scene with the all again to Ellison's ire, which I can totally understand. The first scene reveals they're on a spaceship. It's supposed to be at the end of the episode when they realize they're on a spaceship,
Hmm.
but they show the scene, which they show twice. It's that typical really cheap TV thing where you film a scene and you just show it twice.
Hmm.
But I've never seen people stare into space more
Right.
boringly and just I can't. I,
There's no blocking. It's just
no, there's no
people
blocking.
standing around, looking
Yeah.
off in different directions,
Yes.
saying words.
Yes. And then they use those scenes. Did you notice for the if you watch
Yes.
the title sequence, that's the scenes they use in the little round cutouts for their faces when they show the
Yes.
character names,
Yeah.
including Devin mouthing like "I won't go back" or whatever the hell he says at that point.
Right. Yeah.
It's
So
just
I would say the vibe of the show does have some echoes in soap operas in
yes,
which they had, time they needed to fill up,
yes,
and there wasn't a lot of time to prepare and therefore there was, a lot of there's a lot of padding. Things were fairly static. I remember we talked about this in an earlier episode. I watched one of the first Dark Shadows episodes, and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a maid who says, "I'm disturbed. No, I'm very upset. I'm not feeling myself. I don't know what to say." And anyway, like the scene gets stretched
Right.
out, and she's talking about being really thrown for a loop, but you can't tell it from her delivery at all. And
No,
that's very much like this show.
it does feel like a really bad soap opera that was recorded live in the 1960s when or whatever when you really
19
didn't.
early 70s. It
It's
had
just
sort of like a
really bad.
UHF or
Yeah, I
basic
did.
cable kind of feel to it, but
Except the worst version of that.
yes, the very worst.
I mean, I don't know if any people can act, but you couldn't tell it from this.
And the crazy thing is, this was missing the slowest, easiest pitch imaginable because they had Ellison and Bova. They
Yeah.
had a really great idea, which
hmm
I think, would have worked if they had been in better hands. They
Yes.
had good actors. Like in the first episode, Sterling goddamn
Oh,
Hayden is in it, and
yeah.
he's acting badly.
No, that's right. Now, I will say this, and I don't know anything. Again, the only thing I've ever seen Keir Delay in is 2001, and he doesn't have a
Right.
whole lot to do, but he's pretty good in it. I've never
But
seen.
Sterling Hayden,
I know, but
Colonel
what I'm gonna.
Jack,
To your point, though,
yeah,
to your point, there's a number of really good guest actors
yes,
that I know that can act. You can tell. Again, I made the joke about the frozen caveman doctor, but so in the second episode, they're trying to find a way to fix the ship, and they find some places with a bunch of cryo
yeah,
frozen people, including this scientist, and they find somehow these Amish people figure out a way to revive the guy, which I
mhm,
found a little bit much. Really, they could have solved a lot of problems with this show if they'd made the computer more cooperative and the computer could have just told them what to do. That would have made a whole lot
right,
more sense than, regardless, that
mhm,
I'm rewriting on the fly here. But Frank Converse, and I couldn't tell you anything he's been in, but he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's like one of those that guy guys.
mhm,
I mean, he's not like a leading man kind of thing,
right,
but you can tell just there that he's a ton better actor than the main characters, just in that
right. He
episode,
stands
which is
out.
yeah, and it's not even that great. It's not a very good episode, but he stands out as, oh, he knows how to act, and these other people don't.
Yes, and again, I want to go back to Sterling goddamn Hayden here
Yep. Yeah, go ahead. Go
because
ahead. Go ahead.
we're talking about the purity of essence guy from Doctor Strangelove, one of Kubrick's first movies.
That's right.
The Killing. He's in that. He's a good actor.
Yeah.
He's in The Long Goodbye, a good '70s movie, an adaptation of Raymond Chandler novel. And then in the Goddess Calabra episode, we have John Colicos,
Yes.
who was one of the Klingons in the original Star Trek series, and a good one, right?
Yeah, he was.
Really good as a villain. And Barry
Yeah.
Morse from Space 1999,
Yeah.
and also one of the worst Clark Gable movies ever made. uh, there's a hysterical scene of them having just their drink on in the middle of a hurricane. Walter Koenig is not, he's not Olivier, but he's
He's
yeah,
better than this.
better than this. He shows up twice in this show, and again, I guess he was going to show up a third time.
Yes. Oh, well, worse. I mean, I don't know if you got through all that Radio Free Scarro interview that they
Yes,
did,
I
but
did.
he apparently was going to play Garth.
Yes,
But Garth was going to be an antagonist and chase them and only be in about 6 episodes. So,
yeah,
but
yeah. No, and forget Chekhov for the moment. He
yes.
plays the best sinister villain, one of the best sinister villains in the pantheon of Babylon 5. I mean, who like he
Absolutely.
and Morden, are the
Yeah, totally.
just two
Oh no,
oiliest people.
his performance as Bester
Yeah.
is great because he actually is not only is he oily and a villain, but he's also at times sympathetic and also at times
Yes.
just you even question, well, is he just a bureaucratic stooge kind of not stooge, that's not the right word, but is
Right.
he does what I think the thing about Bester to get off on that just for a second is that I think he at least thinks he's doing the right thing, right? He doesn't
Right.
think he's like the evil guy, which is the
Yeah.
best villains are like that, right? So he can act. That's
Yeah. He
why it's worth pointing
conveys
that act.
good writing well, which I think
But
is
boy, this
yeah.
is. I know he was another one. I felt like was he directed to be okay? okay, Walter, you're an alien, and aliens just have no affect whatsoever. So just go do that because that's the way he comes across in that
Yes.
episode.
Yes.
Almost like it's like a computer must talk like this. Aliens do not have emotions. That's
What
how
is this Earth
almost
emotion you speak of?
exactly.
Yeah. And they blew the budget on building his spaceship.
Which looked a lot to me like the spaceship. It was a bigger version of the spaceship from Alternative Factor.
Yes,
So I knew that
exactly.
made you happy to
It
have like
did. Any callback to my favorite Star Trek episode. Well,
I love
yeah,
the acting at the beginning, the fake, not the fake, but the button pushing at the beginning.
yeah,
It's like when he crashes the ship.
yeah.
It's like putting a kid at a piano or a keyboard and then just like
I
poking
know.
it with their fingers. It's
Uh,
just so stupid.
and nothing happens in that episode.
No, nothing happens.
You could take the first
Nothing.
5 minutes, including the credits, and the last 5 minutes, and that would be the whole episode. And everything
Well,
else in between,
well, Garth
just
falls in
pretend it
love.
never happened.
I
God.
know.
The silence
Because
here is because of our just absolute disbelief at how badly handled this scene is. Not only is the love affair rushed,
oh,
there's no
totally.
affair. It's like at one
No.
point, like he puts his hand on her shoulder.
Right, right, right.
Oh God. Okay.
My favorite part of that is when he goes, "I'm a blacksmith, you know." That's his pickup line. I'm a blacksmith, you know. I'm like, all right, jeez.
Okay. So I can handle heat. Um, all right. So enough therapy. Is this the worst science fiction TV show ever that we've seen?
I think it is. I tried to think, right? I would
Oh, I
here's
don't
a
think
hot take.
so. And
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you
You may prove
the
me wrong.
ultimate nail in the coffin here for
You
this
may prove
show.
me wrong, but I would
Okay.
rather watch Galactica 1980 than this show.
Yeah. Yeah, I would too. I hate to say it.
I'd rather
Just
watch
because
Lost in Space.
it's
Lost in
so
Space
slow.
is a master class of acting and writing compared to this show.
Well, at least it had Dr. Smith and you know,
I
the
think I'd rather watch
the
that.
robot
Well,
on
yes.
Lost in Space is more
Oh,
interesting than the three
totally.
main actors on this TV show
Combined. I'd rather
combined.
watch the whacked out space nuts or whatever the hell I mentioned the other day with Ruth Buzzy and Jim
Yeah.
Neighbors. I'd rather watch. I don't know what's your. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, no, no,
What am I
no. I
missing?
I think it's the worst. There were 16 episodes of this that got produced, and I cannot watch all 16 of them. I just could not.
No, this one.
Of this show, yes.
Yes, yes, I
Of the
agree.
Starlost, I would lose my mind. It
No, I thought
really
you said
would.
you had one that was worse.
No, no, no. This
Okay, I
is
misunderstood what you said.
no, my bad. And so here, I mentioned before it was a slow pitch. The episode we've been alluding to repeatedly here, the Goddess Calabra, is
Hmm.
based on a story. I don't know how much it was based on a story allegedly enough that she gets in the credits on a story written by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Hmm.
So they had the opportunity
Right.
in their episodic TV show with a different, problem of the week to go back to all the people whom Ellison and Bova were connected to and
Yes.
say, "Hey, would you like one of your stories to be adapted to this show to be the problem of the week?" And they blew it. They
Oh, it was,
utterly
yeah.
blew it. And I don't
Comatose
know
was.
why. Like what were the
I
people
don't
behind the
know.
show trying to prove? I don't get it.
I don't think they knew what they were doing. I just don't. I think that one. I will say this. And
Yeah.
this is like damning with the faintest of praise. That one, I'm like, okay, maybe we've gotten a little bit better in this one because at least there was a story of some interest in it. And Colicos clearly is in a different show. He's like in some BBC production of some,
Yes.
costume drama, and he's having a good
Yes.
time
Right.
because he's getting paid, I guess. But the rest of them are just like,
He's a
I don't
fun guy
know.
to watch.
Yeah, he is.
Whenever
He
he's
has
on
some
something.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But holy
Yeah,
cow.
Barry Morris is a bit of a stick, but
Yeah, but he was fine. But it was
yeah.
just that one at least had more than well, I mean, mostly these episodes, and I think this is a pattern apparently that continue because I could not watch all
Mhm.
16 unless there was some
No.
serious money involved. I mean,
No. Unless I did something really bad and I needed
if the
contrition.
listeners would like to put together a Patreon to help us pay for our music, and there was a massive amount of money, I might do it then.
Yeah.
But beyond that,
I might. No.
It's
I
awful.
don't I
It
don't even
really
think
just,
alcohol would help. And it's not fun bad. I
oh,
mean,
alcohol
there
would
are
make me fall asleep.
yeah. So therefore we would fail in watching it. So
Yes,
there are like moments that are unintentionally funny.
sure.
But there are not enough of them. Like in the Goddess Collabor episode when the big duel is happening,
Hmm.
and they're the two guys in leotards kind of dancing and somersaulting around for no good
Yes,
reason. That was pretty hysterical. But there's not
yes.
enough of those moments. Not enough of them on the scales of pain to
Well,
offset how awful this show is.
I think that's when I wrote down, and I wrote down the same note for the next thing we're going to talk about for a somewhat different
Yes.
reason. But when they were dancing around in the background during the
Hmm.
fight scene, I wrote down, is this the Zardoz expanded universe? Because that's what it felt kind of like. These
Yeah.
weirdos dancing, but why the weapons?
The
Looked
PVC
like
piping.
well, they looked like kind of like shower curtain rods with little blocks on the end
Yes,
of
it
them. I
did.
mean, it's just it makes I just was thinking about this because it's the Starlost edition of a mock time, and how much better is the Kirk and Spock fight in a mock time
Oh my God.
compared to this?
Orders of magnitude
Oh
better.
my
And like
goodness!
even like the cheapest Doctor Who episode
Oh, totally.
looks like they had
Look,
a munificent budget
the
compared to
most
this.
the most look. I've watched. I think I've watched more than you have. I've watched a lot of classic Who, and sometimes it can be ponderous and slow. You know, and none of it comes even close to this. I'd rather watch Cars Park as often was the case in 70s TV, watching wheels roll by. Like it's much more interesting than this. It was just, yeah, it was bad. Also didn't mention, did you watch the hype video that I sent you the link
Yes, I
for?
did. Yes.
So like Trumbull's in this video and he's like hyping this new Magicam thing that didn't work out. So from
Right.
2001, this was like the pedigree on this show with Trumbull, Bova, and Ellison
Right.
should have produced better than this.
I know.
But I just think quite clearly the actual producers of the program didn't know what they were doing.
No,
I,
and
I do
it's
have,
a staggering achievement to take that raw material and produce
yeah,
something so awful as
yeah,
this.
it's just.
Yeah.
Now there is, and I have not. I actually tried to get it, but it's not available. So there is a comic adaptation of Ellison's original script, Phoenix Without Ashes, by
Yeah.
IDW, but apparently the app doesn't have it. The license must have run out because you can't get it. It had to been a reasonably priced.
Yeah. And
I would
I
have read
did
it.
I did look for it when I was
I
out running errands yesterday and today, but nobody seemed
and
to
it's a
have it.
novelization.
But you know what they did? What they did have? What I
What's that?
found? I found a copy of Ben Bova's The
Oh,
Star-Crossed.
okay,
So
and
it
that's
was
about
$3,
this.
I would pick it up.
Yeah, you
It's
have to.
about this. It's not an essay about it.
No, no,
It's
it's
really
like
his primal scream,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in novel form, about a future TV executive that can't make anything good. Anyway, I only read the first 20 pages of it so far, but I was just amazed that I found this. So thank you, used bookstore vendor who
There
had
you
this
go. There you
on
go.
the shelves.
Now,
Um,
I do have a question that was raised. Now, you did send me that,
mhm.
the one guy who was a little more critical of Ellison's
Yeah.
involvement in this, and there may be some truth to some of it. I would ask this though: do you think that Harlan Ellison has the disposition to be a showrunner and a script editor?
God no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that I think
I
was
think he's a creative consultant.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that was his role on Babylon 5, and that was
It was
perfect. But to
yeah,
be a showrunner, I mean, I think there's a lot about him that I can definitely understand his frustration with Hollywood. But
sure,
at the same time, it's like, well, if you strike out every time up at,
yeah,
at the plate,
yeah, yeah.
you got to ask yourself, to what extent are you not learning how to work better with these people? I mean,
Well,
maybe people will hear that and say, well, that's because Hollywood is just unutterably evil and full of unimaginative hacks, and you can't possibly do anything good in Hollywood. And yet, we did several episodes on Andor, and
or
we love 2001 and
or a
so
show we
forth.
just mentioned, Babylon 5.
Right. And so to some extent you have to ask, what you know, definitely the people behind this show screwed things up
Oh,
terribly.
there's no doubt about
Like,
that.
why are there so few good adaptations of Ellison's work or original work of his on the screen.
Hmm.
And I'm not
Yeah, I
going to say
mean,
I provide a final answer for that at any point in this series, but I think it's a question that's worth raising.
well, I mean, I guess I'll say two things there. I mean, one, I think that kind of echo something I said in a previous podcast. I think
Hmm.
that Ellison did seem to lack the capacity to compromise, and making a TV show is a team sport. It's not a solo sport.
Right.
So writing short stories is a solo sport for the most part. So that works for him. I think that's part of the problem. We didn't really know how to work well with people often, although there are examples of him working with people. So I don't want to be too derogatory in that regard. And I will at least, in contrast, I will say this, right? Or to his credit, he won four Screen Actors Guild, the Screenwriters Guild
Hmm.
awards, one of which was for the script for this show, right?
Hmm.
Phoenix Without Ashes was the third one they won
Yes.
out of four. So he knows how to write a script, apparently.
Hmm.
He just, in this case, they clearly didn't produce what he wrote. I think that's pretty obvious, even what
Yeah.
little I could see from the comic book. I mean, I'm sure that there's some claims that it maybe was too expensive, but you can fix those things. I
Right.
don't,
Oh, there is a novel version of that too,
yeah, which
which
I've not
I
read.
used to own when I moved. One time I got rid of it because I said, "Oh, I haven't read this yet, and I'm probably not going to get around to it. I might seek it out at some point and read it." Ed Bryant turned the script into a novel.
Yeah,
So I can't speak for whether that story was terrific or not. I just don't
right,
know.
right.
But again, you look at the number of times where Ellison walked away from something or
Yes,
he was unhappy with the result or
yes,
whatever, and like, okay, to what extent might he have contributed to
yeah, that's right.
those
Oh,
outcomes?
there was a contributor. There's no doubt
Right,
about that.
and that's a good segue to the next thing we're
Yes,
talking about, which is A Boy and His Dog, both the
yes.
novella and the movie version of it from the
Hmm.
1970s. But we're going to talk first about the novella. We had,
Sure.
had it on the list of things that we read, but we
Right.
figured we might as well hold on that until we talk about the movie, so the two things, the movie and the novella, could stand side by side. The novella won the Nebula and also was nominated for the Hugo.
Hmm.
The teaser of it is I put down the adventures of a young man, I'll add, in a post-apocalyptic world and his telepathic dog.
Who go looking for food and sex.
Yes, that's a good edit. All right. Did you think this was good, bad, or meh, according to our
It's
scale from the
definitely
last
not
episode?
bad. I think part of me says it's good. Part of me finds it distasteful, but that doesn't mean it's not good. It's a pretty good story overall. I'm not sure I'm
Yeah.
totally satisfied with it. So, but
Yeah,
have
I
you
go
read the
back and
ones?
forth on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have I read the other stories?
Yeah, because the other stories that are linked to this, and I have not read
Yeah,
them.
there's Egg Sucker and I forgot the other one's name, but I think it's ultimately a meh for me.
Okay,
I
I
originally
can
thought it was a
certainly be.
good, but I
Yeah.
think it's a good kind of post-apocalyptic story, but there's not anything about it that particularly stands out to me about it. In kind of serving the purpose of having a post-apocalyptic story. It's the one Ellison story I look at and I say, what was the point?
So okay, yeah,
Other ones, the points are blazingly obvious what he's trying to say in this story. This one I look at and say, I don't know what the message was. Is there
no,
one at all? Or,
I do agree with that. Because I think I tend to think more of his stories. I come away with going, I'm not sure what the point was than you do, but
Mhm.
that just may be my failing to recognize whatever imagery he's trying to put forward. Well, I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
I thought that the telepathic dog stuff and sort of the partnership between the two of them, between
Mhm.
Blood and Vic, is actually interesting. The post-apocalyptic stuff is done relatively well. But like a lot of his stories, I feel like the ending was the point in his mind, and he wrote backwards from the ending. Or there's just something about the way
Yes.
he writes endings that I don't find as cute, I think, as some people must, because
Right.
I just, all right, that's fun. I often find myself then at the end of, and this I think maybe this is I talk myself into meh, or to maybe somewhat agree with the way you characterized it. It's some of his stories. This is the way I felt about Mephisto Comics.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I'm enjoying this story, or it's interesting, or it's compelling, and then you get to the very end. I'm like, okay, that was all he was going for, and then it taints to me somewhat the pages prior to the ending. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It diminishes or discounts the story that because it's
Well, in
like
that
okay,
case, like, why did you take so long to get to
yeah,
that
why did I
conclusion?
do this? Okay, it's kind of like I guess, except it's not like your friend says we're gonna go to this cool pub in some town, and there's these great towns to drive through when we get there. But then we drive to the towns, and you're kind of intrigued, but you're waiting. Then you get there, and it's like either some kind of weird joke, or it's not even a pub, or
Right.
it's not that great. And like, well, okay, well then, I enjoyed the drive, but now that I didn't enjoy it enough. I enjoyed the drive when I thought we were going somewhere cool. Now I
Right.
wonder why we took the drive. That's kind of
Yeah.
how I feel about some of his stories. Why did we take this drive just to get to this
Well, I mean, I
ending?
would say, yeah, I'm sorry. In this case, I would say if you're going to tell this kind of story, the length wasn't as much of a problem because it is a kind of adventure story.
Sure.
So we'd probably tell people, spoilers.
Spoilers. I mean, it's
So what
just.
happens here is that the main character, Vic,
Hmm.
is a solo in the
Hmm.
world after the apocalypse.
Vic Solo,
And yeah, Vic's a solo is just somebody who is surviving
not
on
part of a
his
gang.
own.
Yeah.
Right. There are gangs in the ruins of human civilization, and he's not one of them. He has the advantage of having a partnership with this telepathic dog, who's also has human intelligence.
Yes.
And the dog not only can communicate with him, but can sense things, can sense out danger, can sense out food, can sense out,
Hmm.
he's a horny young man, so he's looking for
Yes.
women to
Yes.
rape
To
effectively.
rape, which is no, not effectively. I think to rape is entirely the way to characterize it.
Yeah.
I mean, the dog is either more intelligent than Vic, or at least more educated than Vic, because
Yes.
he knows things that Vic doesn't know,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
history and literature and things like that. So,
Right.
the
So
dog is Harlan
there's a
Ellison.
funny yes, the dog is Harlan Ellison, and there's a funny back and forth between Vic and Blood, the dog,
Hmm.
constantly.
Hmm.
And so they find a woman who's
Hmm.
disguised as a man.
Hmm.
Uh, he takes her. She seems oddly open to having a sexual relationship with him, which is not
Hmm.
the normal experience. They're surrounded by one of the gangs who
Hmm.
also has sniffed her out.
Right.
There's a firefight with them. They escape. They escape to this underground civilization based on Topeka, Kansas,
Yes.
that has survived the Holocaust, but has done so only by having this dystopian society of tight control and robots that are a robot that keeps the peace. How else would you kind of summarize
So
the
and
story?
this is where I'm forgetting.
Mhm.
I didn't take. Maybe I'm wrong. Was the robot in the story? Or was it just in the
Oh yeah,
movie?
it wasn't a humanoid robot. There was a robot.
Okay. So I didn't, my interpretation, and I've only read the story once,
Mhm.
was I didn't quite see it as fully dystopian. I saw it as an alternative to the apocalyptic hellscape above, was
Yeah,
a preferable one.
yeah, it was
Um,
much more livable. I
it
mean,
was
it was smothering,
it wasn't
boring.
the worst part about
Yeah,
it was that it was boring, which is kind of a
yeah.
weird th I part of
That's right.
my
You're absolutely right about that. I'm blurring a little bit of the movie
yeah, the movie
into
is it's definitely a
yeah.
totalitarian dystopia in the movie.
Mhm.
Which I felt like this the because in this the only thing wrong basically with the Down Under, if I recall, it's what they called it, not to be confused with Men at Work, but there was the women were infertile, or the men were infertile, I guess, and
Mhm.
so they needed Vic to basically be a stud and breed with
Yes.
the women.
Hmm.
And starting with this girl Quilla June, she was the bait to get him to come down there. They sort of had scoped him out and decided he was what they needed. Um, and but he doesn't want to. He's there for a while, but he doesn't want to stay, even though he's basically been given this opportunity to have sex like crazy.
Hmm.
And talks Quilla June into killing her father and leaving the Down Under and go live above with him and with Blood. And Blood's been waiting outside because I don't remember why he couldn't come in, but he couldn't.
Right.
And but Blood is wounded from this fight before that you described.
Hmm.
And the big ending is they he cooks collagen and feeds him to the dog because a boy loves his dog.
Right. Yeah, he's
So
forced to choose, and he chooses cannibalism.
although he doesn't eat her, does she? Just the dog eats her.
Oh, I think it's implied that he did too.
Maybe
Certainly
it
in the
did.
movie. Certainly in the movie.
Um, I
So
and so
again,
this is
like, what was the point of this story?
that's exactly right. And so what I think this is me getting way too much into maybe taking literally what's on the page, but I mean if Vic's main two things he has to worry about are eating
Hmm.
and finding women to have sex with, so much that he's basically willing to rape any female he can get it
Right.
around.
Right.
It seems like it's a pretty good offer to come live where they'll feed you and you
Hmm.
can have sex with all the women without it being a rape. But somehow this is like unacceptable because it's too boring in Topeka, Kansas, underground. I'm not saying, I don't know. It just it doesn't make the character motivations make no sense to me. And
Yeah.
then again, Quilla June is willing to kill her father. Okay, almost kills her mother on the way out too,
Hmm.
and is now willing to live in a post-apocalyptic hellscape because Vic says he loves her. But then the dog's hungry, and so we kill and cook
Right.
her. I don't
Right.
know. It just feels like Ellison had the idea of feeding the girl to the dog in the end after a fake out love circumstance and wrote the whole story
Hmm.
around that. And then I'm like, why do we take this drive?
Yeah. Was it just to shock us with
Yeah, I
the
don't
final
know.
choice?
Yeah,
And for me, and this is a matter of personal preference, but there are certain kinds of media where the point is to shock somebody.
sure.
And it's not for me. I'll just say that.
I
So
mean,
like when people talk about Italian horror movies and how great they are, yes, I've seen some of them, and I can be shocked, and that's not what I'm looking for.
right,
I want something a little more imaginative. I think Alien is a kind of a masterpiece as a movie. There's lots of shocking in it, but there's a lot
sure.
more than that in it. Other than, the banter between Vic and Blood and, a genuinely good action scene. I think Ellison is not known for
Hmm.
writing action scenes in his stories, but a good one in this one, in this particular novella. Other than that, what else
No,
is there in
the
this?
dialogue is kind of is
Mhm.
kind of well done. It's very Ellison-esque.
Yeah.
But and again, I mean, just think I don't want to glide over this, right? It's a pretty it's a highly misogynistic story.
Oh, yeah.
It's unpleasant. And again, I'm not quite, but it just treats it too casually in my mind, and not in a way to like even make a point about it. It just sort of like is what it is, and I found that
Right. And so this is where
problematic. I
like
don't
like
know.
somebody's going to jump up listening to this and say, "Well, that's the point. It's satirizing misogyny."
Is it?
I that's like when people say something regrettable and then they say it was a joke.
Right,
I think I'm that incredulous about saying this is a satire of
right,
misogyny.
right.
I don't know.
Agreed, agreed.
All right. So we also
So,
watched the movie.
yes.
Did you think the movie was better or worse or the same level of quality as the novella?
So having, been talked into the novella being meh, I think the movie's worse. I think in some ways on a superficial level, it's a fairly direct adaptation of the
Hmm.
story,
Yes.
especially the first part.
Hmm.
But they tone the rape part down, I guess understandably, but it really is
Yeah.
not as overt.
Right.
She really more kind of seduced, even though he wants to go have sex with her. I don't know the word rape is in this movie, I don't recall, but I don't think it is. It is in the story.
No.
And I think that there's a suggestion she's seducing him to some degree in the movie.
Hmm.
She's much more willing in the movie than in the story. There's
Right.
some
Hmm.
ambiguity about that in the story. So in some ways that part of the misogyny gets toned down, even though I know Joanna Russ wrote an essay in which she really went after the movie more than the novella. But I
Hmm.
think the movie is in some ways less. It's not great, don't get me wrong, but I think that the movie's um, makes it a little more acceptable in the way the story is told. And then she tricks him to go down to the underground, or the down under whatever it's called,
Hmm.
and it is weirdly different than in the. It's still
Oh, very
supposedly
different.
Topeka, but it's
Much more dystopian.
much. Everyone's
and
wearing
much
weird white
creepier.
face. They're like it's white face with the makeup, like they have smiles painted on the rosy cheeks, like they're
Yeah.
all clowns. That's
Yeah, so
again,
they
I
all
thought this was like
have
Zardoz.
yeah, they all have clown grease paint on.
Yeah, but it's run
And
in a
there's like,
very
well, let me just throw for the also for the creepiness. There's like a barbershop quartet,
yes,
and there's like a marching band that keeps playing all the time, like a high school
yes,
marching band. It's very much sort of like the at Disneyland, that Main Street USA
yes,
version of
yes.
America, but
Well,
done in an incredibly creepy way. Not to say that Main Street USA is not already creepy, but
okay, pretty
yeah,
creepy, but
yeah.
it made me think. Again, I'm not joking. It didn't. I know it's not identical, but it reminded me of
Mm,
the old people in Zardoz and sort of the way it was just kind of manically, kind of normal, but very weird. There's some
mm.
episodes of The Prisoner that had some kind of like trying to overly cheery background stuff going on while
Yes.
he's
Oh,
being
all
sort
the
of
time. Yeah.
yeah. So that
All the
reminded me of that.
voiceover announcements, in the
Yeah, the voice.
background.
Oh, that's a good example. But
Yeah.
like the one where he's like runs for office and they're wearing all the jackets with the stripes
Yeah.
and the straw
Hmm.
hats, and it just kind of reminded me a little bit of all that. Although clearly not as good as The Prisoner. And then it's not her father in this. Now it's
Hmm.
just the head of the council or whatever they called it,
This is
and
Jason
he's
Robards.
Jason Robards in the goofy makeup,
Yeah.
and making proclamations about putting people to death for doing various things that they're going to the farm,
Yeah.
you
So this
know.
is this is actually part of the movie I liked. So I
Okay.
liked the sort of casual tyranny of the committee.
Okay. Oh
So
yeah, I can see
it's like
that.
three people, yeah, three middle-aged people who,
Yes.
kind of talk about murdering people for indiscipline, the way that, someone will say, well, I guess we don't have the budget for a pie eating contest this year.
Right. Right. That's right.
It's awful, right?
Yeah, it is.
And Jason Robards is really good. Like at the end, like he's trying to prevent people from panic, and he's just has this sort of old guy energy. It's like, all right, everybody, just calm down. And at some point, he gives up and says, "God damn it!"
That's right.
I thought
But
that was funny, but
yeah, I
yeah,
agree. But this is the existence of this committee though is a major plot point that it's not in the novella.
yes, yeah,
Because the whole point was that Quilla June went up and was the bait to get
hmm
Vic so she could be elevated to the committee, and then they reject her and say, well, you have to wait your turn or
right,
whatever, which then gives and then instead of Vic being promised to be able to sleep with all the women in Topeka,
hmm
basically, he's hooked up to a milking machine for his sperm, and then this sort of again this dystopian wedding thing where all the couples are getting married and getting a vial of sperm so they can go have babies.
right.
It's pretty bizarre, but all of it would
Well,
he
and
escapes.
wait,
Go ahead.
before we leave that,
Mhm.
we have to mention Don Johnson is Vic in this movie,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
it's like he has this scene where he says like, "Oh, you want us to let me to inseminate all your women?" Ha ha ha!
Yeah,
And this sort of like young Don Johnson hopping
right,
up and down. Anyway, and then like it cuts to him being
yes,
hooked up to the sperm
yes,
extractor.
yes. And then all this. So now Quilla June is upset because she's been rejected for the committee. It's a whole different story than in the book. The movie actually gives more motivation to the character in that
Oh
sense
yeah,
for why
yeah.
she does what she does, and also why they might kill her at the end of the movie for that matter.
Yeah, that
So
there's
I don't.
this discontent among
Yes,
the young people in there, and as a revolutionary leader, though, she's only mostly interested in getting power for herself.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
hmm
So she becomes far less sympathetic than in the novella,
yeah,
which in
but
some
far
ways
more
changes.
interesting.
Yes, I agree with that. So, and then
Hmm
they escape eventually, and as with the novella, they end up cooking her and feeding her to the
hmm
dog because he's hungry.
Yeah,
And then there's this line at the end that Ellison got mad about.
which I don't know why.
I don't either. It's about
I
something about her
It
having
doesn't
bad
change
taste.
anything.
No, no. If he was going to get mad about the adaptation, he should get mad about the way they changed the middle part of the sort of the last act with the underground stuff. That
Right,
was what was different, not the dog making a joke about her having bad taste.
right. So you can probably tell I liked this a little bit better than the novella.
Yeah, I can see that. I
because
see that.
of the added depth to it, and I I, I said before I don't have a great love of Italian shock movies, horror movies, but I have an odd affection for the cynicism of 70s movies, but I can only
Right.
take them in a certain
Sure.
amount. This week actually, so not only did I watch this, but I'm also leading a discussion tonight about Little Big Man. So I've got all kinds of 70s cynicism coming out of my ears right now. And this goes a bit far. I mean, obviously we're talking about a story, whether it's the screenplay or the original novella that has strong misogynistic elements. And
Yes.
so all I'm saying is, as its execution, I think is a little bit better than the novella.
I think that the motivations for the characters make more sense in the
Hmm.
movie than the novella. The novella feels a little tighter than the movie,
Hmm.
partially because I think the underground part drags on too long.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Ultimately, I'm not sure that I don't plan to revisit either of these two properties ever again anytime soon, if ever. How about
Yeah.
that?
No, no. In fact, I was going through my DVDs. I was trying to purge the DVDs a bit, and I did not realize I had this on DVD.
Hmm.
So at some point, I thought I should own this because I might watch it again. But I can say for sure I'm never going to watch it again because I had never I probably bought it because I had not seen this
Right.
practically since it came out. Um, and then could say I was there when the acting colossus of Don Johnson revealed himself to the world.
And the acting colossus of Tiger the dog from the Brady
Yeah,
Bunch.
that's right. That is Tiger. That we failed to say that until now that
That's
it
just
was Tiger the
crazy.
dog. Right. And the guy who does the voiceover work for the voice of Blood is really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. The,
Yeah.
the the that stuff still works in
Hmm.
this film. That's something translated that ported over well from the story. That's
Right.
right.
But it's such a horrible future, and there's so
Yeah.
many elements that are so brutal. It's
We
not
get
it's a movie that a lot of people listening to this might want to skip, and I certainly, as I said, don't want to see it again.
It
I'm done.
supposedly was inspirational to Mad Max and also to
Hmm.
the Fall Out Boy game
Oh,
series.
definitely, definitely. I mean, the look of it, the way that
Mm,
you would depict, this trash-filled world
mm.
after the Holocaust. I'm sure that there was some connection there.
Yeah, no, I think what's his name? I'm blanking on the guy's name that made Mad Max said that it was definitely an influence.
Right. So before we get into the comics and kind of our wrap-up comments, why are there not more Ellison-based movies or TV adaptations, do you think?
Because the short form was his form, and it's not translatable in my opinion.
Hmm.
I mean, the only thing that works for him are anthology TV shows for the most part, like Twilight Zone and
Yeah,
Outer Limits. That's his jam, that's his zone. And because we don't have much of any of that these days, except Dark Mirror,
right.
I don't. There's just no venue for his kind of writing. His writing it's short form is almost entirely his his jam, for lack of a more
Yeah.
technical term.
Yeah, and I think in the case of The Boy and His Dog, the movie, it was based on a longer work by him
Yeah, yeah,
already,
yeah,
and it was not as hard to kind of add to it, kind of
yeah.
build on top of that foundation as it would be for some of the other works that we talked about last episode. I think there are other elements of those stories that are hard to film. So, some of them are very internal.
Right.
Some of them are just kind of really trippy, and trippy sometimes works as a movie or a TV episode and often does not. Um, I think it's not necessarily just because it's um, Hollywood's fault for not recognizing his greatness.
No.
I think it's just you have a tough time adapting some of these, especially since we live at a time when, as you said, beyond Black Mirror, there are not a lot of other anthology sorts of media out there. Um, there's no Outer Limits, there's no Twilight Zone, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. I just think that's just what
Yeah.
um fits his work. How would you make a movie out of so we both like I can't talk today. Repent Harlequin's the TikTok man or I have no mouth and I must scream.
Mm-mm.
How would you I don't even want to see I have no mouth and I must scream on screen.
No, I
It's
don't.
horrible enough in its own and it works as a story. I don't see how or why you would adapt it.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I
the theater of the mind works very well because it's already pretty grand guignol.
yeah.
Um,
So I mean, I listened to an interview a couple of weeks ago.
grand
I told you.
guignol. If I did not pronounce that correctly, at least I didn't say grand guignol.
Fair enough. I listened to a guy named interviewed Nat Segaloff, who wrote
Hmm.
a biography of Ellison, who
Yeah,
apparently did other stuff and was an author and was involved with uh, Leonard Nimoy and John Delancey on some audiobook stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
But he was said that he had tried to adapt. I guess he's a long-term friend of Ellison's, and had tried to adapt some of his works to screen, to longer works, and he said he couldn't do it. I just don't. They just don't. They're not amenable to that.
Yeah.
Period. Right? I'm just not. Again, you could make some of this stuff into a 30-minute or an hour-long story, but that's it. I don't see you do anything else with it.
Right.
I mean, one thing, like most of his stories, we talked about this before. I mean, and maybe some readers will disagree, or maybe granted, I've only read God knows, 10% of all the stories he wrote. So maybe I'm missing something, but he just doesn't write interesting characters. He writes, for the most part, he writes interesting ideas
Hmm. In
and
situations.
scenarios,
Yeah.
and he doesn't like, I can't think of, oh, this is a character from a Harlan Ellison story that really sticks out of my mind, in the short stories at least, right? I mean,
Hmm.
maybe a few, but not that many.
Yeah. All right. We mentioned Babylon 5 before we leave. The big screen or small screen completely. He was a creative consultant on the show. What would you say his influence probably was?
It's hard to say. I just know that Straczynski valued his input,
Hmm.
right? One thing there is, and I wish I'd written it down because I can't remember what it is. There's some sort of saying about some Egyptian saying about being between you and the hard places. I can't remember now, but I
Hmm.
noticed it in some of his writing from like decades ago. So that clearly is something Straczynski got from it. Something Ivanova
Yeah.
says in a particular, or maybe it's Sheridan talking to Ivanova. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I should have
Yeah.
written that down. I didn't. So there was that influence.
Yeah. I think that he
But
probably had some part in linking that TV show to all the great ideas of classic science fiction.
sure.
I don't know what that looks like, exactly how. I mean, I think Straczynski had a good idea what he wanted to do with
Hmm.
Babylon 5, and certainly that included telepaths and super
Hmm.
races and all these different elements. But I think that it helped to some extent. I can't exactly say to have someone like Harlan Ellison around. Because, for example, like when he was giving that interview for the Starlost, which is the opposite
Hmm.
pole of Babylon 5
Yes.
here,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and he did acknowledge, the kind of the lineage of multi-generation ship stories and science
Hmm.
fiction. Then he was rattling them off and so forth. And I could
Yes.
kind of see Ellison doing that, in the script room for Babylon 5. Like, hey, have you thought about doing this kind of
Yeah, I
story?
could
Or
see
if you're
that.
going to do this kind of story, maybe here's a twist on it that hasn't been done before. Anyway, I can definitely see that.
I
Okay.
agree. I agree.
All right. Comic books, since we're both longtime readers of comics,
Yes.
Ellison did a couple of issues of Marvel comics. There was one episode, one self-contained Avengers
Hmm.
story, Avengers 101, that was apparently originally intended to be a Hawkman story for DC. How did you like this issue?
I didn't really care for it, to be honest.
It seemed forced.
It seemed very forced. So I mean, real simple terms, I think it's about some dude who I'm not sure where his powers come from. He's possibly going to be responsible for starting a war, but the Watcher gets involved and tells him that he has to
And
kill
it,
five people.
yeah,
Starts
in
out
a very
with a chess.
unwatcher-like way.
Yeah, it's like I don't get involved, but here, go do this thing. Like
Right. Go
what?
murder these people because it's important for the future that these people die.
And but this again,
Yeah.
this is a great example of what I think is a good example of Ellison's ending. So I'll do it this way. So first, it starts off about a chess computer,
Hmm.
which I don't know seemed a bit ponderous.
Yes.
Then we get the Watcher intervening with the bad guy and saying, You're important, but these five people have to be murdered now because they're going to have children. They're going to cause a great apocalyptic war.
Hmm.
But you have to kill them now. And
Right.
the Avengers stop him from killing the people, only to find out that that was all a ruse to get the Avengers involved, because really the guy that was killing the people was the one that's going to cause the war, and the Watcher takes him off or something at the end,
Yeah.
right?
It's
It
like
just
the rest of the comic didn't matter,
right.
except
But
for the
see,
people
that's
who died.
well, yeah, but that's my point about some of these stories. Like
Yes.
the idea was there's going to be a twist at the end. The guy wasn't
Hmm.
actually killing people who were innocent to prevent a war. He was the problem, and somehow that's how we got the Avengers involved. The crazy part is the beginning of the story is there's going to be this amazing contest between this Soviet chess master and a computer named Nimrod, and the Avengers have to be here because it's such a momentous occasion. I'm like, what? And then the Vision
That don't they have anything
realizes,
better to do than
yeah,
to be eye candy at the first chess game with a machine?
and then in the Vision, who apparently is a big chess guy, who knew,
Hmm.
gets clued in. There's a problem because the computer uses some opening that's been was deemed I don't know erroneous in some a match in 1970 whatever in Curacao. I'm like, what the? It's just the whole thing. It's just silly.
Yeah.
So I was not impressed. How about
Yeah.
you?
Nah, it wasn't good. Um, and then there was the Avengers, the earlier Avengers issue that was
Hmm.
also had a crossover with the Incredible Hulk,
Yes.
where an alien. We find out this is kind of wacky, given all the sort of science fiction-ish elements of the story. Beyond this, he's he's hot to do something with the Hulk. He's an alien
Don't
with
know.
this crazy technology,
Yes.
involved in like shrinking things down. Shrinking things down is a meme a lot in Marvel comics. So like
Hmm.
so the Hulk eventually winds up in the microverse. Um, but he's doing this, we discover, because the Lovecraftian dark gods need something to happen with the Hulk. It's like
I
I'm
didn't. I
holding my head
just.
reading this is
Yeah.
like this is just a
Yeah. Yeah.
mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I mean then the second part of the story in the Incredible Hulk. So we're talking about Avengers 88 and Hulk 140 for people who care
Right.
about this.
Yes.
Um, does establish in the microverse, this peaceful time for the Hulk, which of course has to end, or else then there's no Hulk comic book.
Right.
But he falls in love with this woman who's also green skinned like the other people in this uh, miniature civilization. Her name is Jarella. She comes up again a couple of
Yeah. She
times.
does. Yeah.
She's a minor character in the Hulk continuity, but other than
One of the
establishing,
Hulk's great loves, apparently.
yeah, but other than establishing that, doesn't
Yeah.
this again is very self-contained, doesn't have any real impact on anything else in Marvel Comics, and it just felt like a cameo appearance by Harlan Ellison in
Yeah. And in both
Marvel Comics.
cases, he's story and plot by Ellison, and then somebody else
Yeah,
wrote the text.
Probably Roy Thomas, if
I think
memory
it was Roy
serves.
Thomas, and I know it was Roy Thomas in 101. I think he was also
Yeah,
Roy Thomas in the other ones as well. But yeah, it was
yeah, we
just
should do an episode on Roy Thomas sometime.
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, he's really an important figure in the comics of our youth that then spawned all the comics and comic related media that we have
Should
today.
we do an episode on the chess computer Nimrod?
Absolutely. Can we come up with a better name than Nimrod? I understand the classical reference; it makes sense, but
Yes, 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 yes,
you can't help but chuckle a little bit.
yes.
Just for sake of completeness, I want to mention that there are other comic book content that involve Harlan Ellison. For example, I had a small publisher adaptation of A through Z and the Chocolate Alphabet. I remember there was, I think, probably in Epic Illustrated, there was an adaptation of Repent Harlequin.
That sounds familiar,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
I
there
don't
was
have
a
it.
Demon with the Glass Hand comic. We mentioned Phoenix Without Ashes. So over the
Mhm.
years, there have been lots and lots of comic book adaptations of his work. If you're a real
Oh, I
Ellison
should have
fan,
written it down. There was a not long before he died. There was a maybe 10 years before he died, but some in the 2000s, there was a comic graphic novel that was a New York
Hmm.
Times bestseller that he was part of.
Yeah,
It's published by DC, but I forget what it's called right now.
right.
I've not read it.
All right. So we've talked about Ellison, the persona.
Hmm.
We've talked about Ellison, his written work. We've talked about the TV, movie, comic book
Hmm.
adaptations and original works that he did. We're just going to now wind up our final thoughts on Harlan Ellison. I'll just mention an aside here. He did write things that were not speculative fiction early in his career. He wrote things like Spider Kiss, Gentleman Junkie, The Deadly Streets that were, you know, effectively like social commentary about crime,
Hmm.
drug addiction, and so forth. But for the body of work that we talked about, what are your final thoughts about Harlan Ellison
So
before we
having
finish?
having done this deep dive, and it's the deepest dive I've ever done into Ellison, although obviously been aware of all this for quite some time, I decided he was obviously a very intelligent man who was skilled with words. But he could also overwrite quite a bit. Um, he's amazingly prolific. I really have come to the conclusion that the long form was not his strong suit. He was short stories was
Hmm.
it was his milieu, and shorter TV shows. He had too much of a love affair, in my opinion, of the twist at the end kind of writing. That's to me, I found it a little tiresome at times. His own self promotion and his own sort of critique of other media make me more critical of him because if you're going to hold the rest of the world up to the standard, then I guess you should live up to the standard. In some ways, I think it's diminished my enjoyment of some of his work because it
Hmm.
makes me look at it really more critically in terms of, well, if TV is terrible, then why is your TV not terrible too? Or if all art is supposed
Hmm.
to be revelatory of some deeper moral and be art and not ever be mediocre, then if you're ever anything close to mediocre, then I'm going to be more critical of you. It's hard for me not to fully separate that. I think he was entertaining to listen to. But I did realize the more I listened to interviews back to back, my God, it had to have been exhausting to be his friend sometimes because he
Hmm.
was just, if he was like that off the camera, holy cow, man, he was on and angry a lot. And I think his own writing suggests that may be true. But anyway, so a complicated person, and I know he wasn't kind to everybody that he was around. He was kind to other people. He's complicated, intelligent, impressive, and important, although perhaps not as important as he thought he was. That's my
Yeah.
word bubble.
Yeah, so we did a lot here to try to, as much as we could, separate the man from his work. And I that was a process that already started a long time ago for me.
Hmm.
So back, I mentioned, in an earlier episode that there was this sort of semi-serious Harlan for president campaign
Right.
that happened when I was in my teens. And about a decade later, I was talking with my mom, who's also a big science fiction buff. I mentioned the bookstore many times in this podcast, and I mentioned to her that I had kind of lost some of my affection for Harlan Ellison, the person. And she was really surprised and said, "Well, I remember you like you had the Ellison or Harlan for president. I think I had a bumper sticker or something. I
Right.
didn't put it in my car, but I had it anyway." And I said, "Well, I'm not a teenager anymore." And so that persona didn't appeal to me as much as it did.
Hmm.
And the kind of the perpetual anger and
Yes.
the complete uncompromising approach to life and so forth. There are things that are worth being uncompromising about, but not everything.
Right.
And I was beginning to have my questions about some of his dust ups with other people in the
Yes.
writing community, TV producers, fans. Certainly, as I mentioned, I saw
Hmm.
some of his frictions with them, and I could still enjoy his work nonetheless.
Right.
I just didn't need the shtick anymore.
Right.
And I'd heard the stories and a lot of the stories and that he liked telling and so forth. And I'd kind of moved on Ellison, the person. And so here we are 40, 50 years later, coming back to Harlan Ellison, and I still like a lot of his work.
Hmm.
I still think that seeing him as a pivotal figure in science fiction is a fair description.
Sure.
I think not being pigeonholed into just being like a hard science fiction writer or whatever the pigeonhole happens to be, that he was his own voice. I think that's terrific.
Hmm.
I like the Twilight Zone, and I like Twilight Zone like stories, and he was very good at those.
Hmm. Oh, yes.
I share with you uh, a sense of a little bit of impatience with the obviousness and artificiality of some of the twists at the end of his stories. Those don't work quite as well as maybe they did for my younger self.
Sure.
Um, I think he's important as really as part of the new wave movement in science fiction. I think he's probably clearly one of the biggest names in the American part of the new wave that came out of the 1960s and in science fiction. Um, I just, I don't mourn that his work hasn't been adapted successfully more to the screen. I think it bothered him a lot in his own life. But
Yes.
it doesn't bother me. If
I,
I wanted to, I could always show somebody a copy of one of his anthologies and say, "Go
mhm.
read this. There's some good stories in here." They're not all great because no one author and no one anthology is just nothing but gems in it. But I could say there's a lot to this Ellison guy that's worth paying attention to. But there's a lot, as I said, too, about his his persona and so forth that it's good to be able to separate that finally. And I think it also limited him to some extent
Oh, I
because
think definitely it did. Yeah.
yeah, I mean I think that his own desire to become more relevant in other places in television or wherever was sort of limited by the fact that he was such a uncompromising juggernaut and he found his audience with science fiction people,
Sure.
science fiction and fantasy people, and maybe he didn't want to have that moniker on his resume, at the top, that
Hmm.
known as just a science fiction writer, but it worked best there.
No, it did. I think that, and maybe you touch on, because the funny thing is, in some ways, I agree with you about the separation. Although in some ways, in my own mind, it's almost become the persona has been more fused with an evaluation, at least of the work, because it's so
Hmm.
prominent. I just think that if one of the things that frustrates well, one of the things that sticks in my mind as I watch these interviews and I read these essays and I look at these experiences, I can, on the one hand, I fully understand and agree that, say, producers and executives and advertisers and whatnot often interfere too much with the creative work to the detriment of the work, right? And like we
Hmm.
talked a little bit about Rod Serling's experiences and what have you. And I'm sure that there's plenty of writers who have had their work butchered to get it on television. I
Hmm.
understand that. Again, my incredibly minor examples of, having some of my work edited at times when I didn't agree with it, but either you go along with it or you don't get it published, so you make these choices. So I think if he really thought TV wasn't that important, if he
Hmm.
really thought it was pointless and kind of just junk, then he shouldn't. Then why did you want so badly to be on it? Because I think you did. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of contradiction in him makes him a little difficult to take. It's difficult for me to take some of his moralizing seriously because I think there's a lot of self-contradiction in the way he
Well, if he did it for
moralizes.
commercial reasons, that's fine. I mean, I put down a question. I really wondered in doing all the work for this whether he should have focused on one or the other. If like he had gone through life being a fiction writer,
Hmm.
happy with the kind of reception he got from people who were
Right.
editors
Right.
or fans of the writing or whatever, or devoted himself more fully to trying to make a breakthrough in Hollywood. Changed his tactics, did whatever, but
Right.
that became his mission at some point in his career.
No, I mean,
Um,
I think I have no problem with, to be clear, that the man was trying to make a living and to be comfortable
mhm.
and to get his due. I think all that's fair.
Yeah.
I guess there's a contrast. I only watched part of it. I think you've watched it because you mentioned it to me. But there is an interview from the early '80s on YouTube. It's Ellison, Asimov, Gene
Yeah.
Wolfe,
Gene Wolfe.
Studs
Yeah.
Terkel, and somebody
Mhm.
else.
Yeah. It's a really interesting group.
Yeah, and the truly intriguing thing is how nice Asimov is. Soft, relatively speaking, to Harlan,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, like when he said, like Harlan, and I understand Harlan's point to a degree. Like it's about the science fiction stuff, and it's like, my work is the same. I want to be considered in the same kind of category as Edgar Allan Poe and Franz Kafka. Okay, not pure just science fiction. I get that, and we talked about this some in a previous episode. And Asimov had like, well, okay, I write things that aren't science fiction. So some
Hmm.
bookstore owner might put my book, like one of my nonfiction books, in the science fiction section because they see my name, and then someone buys my book, so that's good for me. I mean, it's just a little more
Right.
pragmatic about it.
Hmm.
I mean, this thing with Ellison, I can understand wanting, and he could have, in my opinion, could have been like, I want to be taken seriously um, as just a writer, which is totally fair. But he had a tendency to not just say, I want to be primarily known as a writer. He has to attack science fiction and fans and the whole idea of it all, while at the same time, as you say, that was his milieu. That's where he made his living. Those are the awards that he won. He didn't say, "Do not put my story into a Nebula contest or a Hugo." If he'd done that, okay, fine. Then you really, really don't want to be a science fiction writer. But he did. He was a science fiction writer for those purposes, and that's
Hmm.
perfectly fine.
Yes.
And to some degree, the determination, for good or for ill, the determination of where you rank in literary circles is outside of your hands as a writer, and it may be
Yeah.
outside the scope of your lifetime.
Right.
And that may be frustrating, but it's nonetheless true.
Yeah, and that's a really great point because I'll see sometimes where people from our geeky corner of publishing, this not where publishers that we the kinds of things that we read become acceptable to like the mainstream in the sense that they think it's important literature. This is
Right.
worthy of paying attention to.
Yeah.
That it'll appear on the list of books you should read, or
Hmm.
the what book clubs read, or what is at the front of a bookstore that you visit, or whatever. And I always find the choices there to be a bit odd.
Hmm.
As someone who's read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, I like, really, that person? Not
Right.
to mention any names, but there's some contemporary writers. I'm stunned that they have achieved that kind of level of notoriety outside of the fandom of the science fiction and
Right.
fantasy world.
Right.
But that, as you said, that's not under your control.
No, it's not.
No, and as much as charming as Ellison could be, as appealing as a personality as could be, he had a lot of cards to play. But I think ultimately he couldn't control all of that. And I think also the thing that I said this before when we did the episode on his writing, he is a really good short story writer.
Hmm.
I I I think sometimes the hype about him is excessive.
I think so too. Yes.
Yeah, he's not one of the greatest American short story writers. Sorry,
I mean,
folks.
yeah, I don't know where and I will punt on that. I don't know enough to even make that kind of claim.
Mhm,
I think that here's the irony in my mind, and maybe this makes sense, maybe it doesn't.
mhm.
Um, Whatever you want to call him, he clearly wasn't writing your typical short stories, right? He's writing again. I think magical realism fits what he writes
Yeah.
as much as anything else. I'm not interested. I somewhat balk at speculative fiction because I don't think a lot of speculation is going on in some of these stories. Some there are, but some are
Mhm.
just magical in their kind of framing,
Yeah.
fantastical. I think a lot of the praise that he got for being more literary
Mhm.
came because, in contrast to other science fiction short stories in the '60s, he was more literary. Do you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
vastly
So I
more.
mean,
Yeah.
if he'd
Yeah.
existed if he'd been simply a literary guy, like
Mhm.
I don't know who the appropriate persons would be right now. He
Mhm.
only worked in the literary circles and wasn't in the science fiction world. He would have had a different kind of. He would have been seen differently,
Mhm.
and maybe elevated to the top because he would have been competing with different kinds of writers. Does that make any sense? It just,
Yeah.
you
So I
compare.
think to be fair to a lot of the writers at the time, they were literate people,
Sure,
and
no, they were.
they just didn't make such a point of
Well, okay,
making particularly literary allusions, or
I'll,
again, his prose style,
well,
was
the only short stories that we've
very
read for this
eloquent.
podcast
Yeah.
were the iRobot stories, right?
Hmm. Right.
They're not as quote unquote literary as Ellison stories,
No.
right?
Hmm.
So if I'm a 17-year-old in 1973, right?
Hmm.
And I've read a lot of Asimov. I've read some Arthur C. Clarke stories. I've read
Hmm.
Larry Niven stories. Um,
Or
and
even
then
a lot of the pulpy
Ellison,
things like
or the
Edgar
pulpy
Rice
things.
Burroughs and
Yeah, and then
yeah.
the Doc Martin, not Doc Martin, what E. Doc
It's
Smith.
Doc
Doc
Smith,
Martin's a
yes.
kind of shoe. Um,
Oh, I think he's like Doc Martin, the British comedy series
nah,
about a doctor in
so
a small town.
there's that too. But Doc Martens are kind of shoe, right?
Yeah.
Um, Regardless,
There are docs everywhere.
you read a bunch of pulpy stuff. You read some hard science fiction stories, and then you read
Hmm.
Ellison. And by
Hmm.
comparison, it's just a different kind of writing, especially if you didn't otherwise delve into more literary kinds of short stories. Do you see what I'm saying? I think by
Yeah, yeah.
comparison, in that context, then yeah, then some 70-year-old thinks he's really smart because he reads Ellison, and that helps kind of fuel this legend,
Hmm.
especially if you didn't buy into, as you said, the persona and all all this stuff. It's just an interesting kind of synergy. I just think the irony of all this is part of that legendary status is because of a bunch of science fiction fans that he had a love-hate relationship with. I just find
Yeah.
that sort of interesting. Anyway, probably time to wrap up, but I will.
Well, no, I want to make one more point about him. I would
Sure,
say
please.
also
No, I'm sorry, we're done.
as
No.
as a writer in all these different media, he was a moralist, and I think he
Yeah,
stands out for that too.
sure.
In the same mold as Rod Serling or Kurt
Sure.
Vonnegut,
Sure, sure, sure.
he wanted the fiction to have a moral point, and when it didn't, like
Yeah.
as in the case of A Boy and His Dog, it kind of stood out because
Yeah.
most of the time he's trying to make a point, and a lot of the
Hmm.
points were important, and you could say that he was heavy-handed about it, or he
Yeah.
rushed the story to get to a particular point. But I think he can be commended for that too.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap up. We're not going to do a merchandise question as is our usual habit at the end of episodes, but instead I'm going to ask if someone were to make a new version of the Starlost, and maybe not exactly the Starlost, but the same sort of idea about the multi-generation ship,
This
who
we
would
roll out
you
that chair from Clockwork Orange to make me open my eyes to watch the rest of the Starlost.
That's about the only way I could finish this series. Whom would you want to be the showrunner or lead writer or whatever as
Well, I'm going to
the
pick
leader of the
Joe
effort?
Michael Straczynski to be the new showrunner of the new version of
Yeah.
Starlost. He knows how to make a long form science fiction weekly show with a long story arc that can be
Hmm.
satisfying, and he knows how to do with big space stations. So there you
Yeah,
go.
I think that would be terrific. That would be my choice too. And I thought about
Yeah.
maybe Tony Gilroy, but I thought, nah.
He was my backup only because right now in my mind, Tony Gilroy can do no wrong after Andor. Or at least I'm willing to give him another chance.
That's what I thought too. I thought I was being biased just because of the fact that I'm such a fan of Andor. But I think there you have a different sort of story than the
Yes.
episodic
Yeah.
structure of
Agreed.
the Starlost. So the Starlost done right. So I wouldn't pick him
There you
necessarily
go.
for that. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening to our four-part deep, 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 deep dive into the works of Harlan Ellison. I hope you enjoyed it.
Adios.
Before we float off to the next section of the giant Canadian space arc, we wanted to thank you yet again for your support of this podcast. Please like and subscribe on the podcast app of your choice. And drop us a line at someancientgeeks@gmail.com or visit us at our Substack, someancientgeek.substack.com, plus all the other social media places you can find us like Facebook, Blue Sky, and Reddit. All content copyright 2026, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, whom you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.
I guess I felt the same way about Cypress Corners. Till I discovered that there was something else.